Republic of Sudan is an ethnically diverse country in northeastern Africa with a population of 39.3 million people. It was previously the largest country in Africa until 2011, when the Republic of South Sudan became an independent nation. This division into two separate countries has resulted in significant changes for the Sudanese people in terms of geography, politics, finance, and culture. Islam is the most widely practiced religion in Sudan, with approximately 70% being Sunni Muslim. Traditional religious beliefs are held by 25% of the population, while the remaining 5% are Christian. Because Sudan is a third world country, poverty remains widespread. Almost half of Sudanese people live below the national poverty line, with 75% of the poorest living in rural areas. Before 2001, the Sudanese arriving in Australia were mainly skilled migrants. By 2001, 4,910 Sudan-born people migrated to Australia, of which more than 98% had arrived under Australia's refugee and humanitarian program. Drought, famine, and war had resulted in large numbers of Sudan-born refugees fleeing to neighboring countries. Many of these people were resettled in Australia, with the greatest amount arriving between 2002 and 2007. Among the total Sudan-born in Australia from the 2011 census, 61.1% arrived between 2001 and 2006, while 14.6% arrived between 2007 and 2011. The latest census recorded 19,369 Sudan-born people in Australia, which is an increase of 1.7% from the 2006 census. The 2011 distribution of Sudanese people by state and territory showed that Victoria had the highest number of Sudanese people, with 6,085. This was then followed by New South Wales with 5,629, then Western Australia with 2,722, and finally Queensland with 2,582. The majority of Sudanese people outside of Sudan can be found in neighboring African countries and are typically refugees. Around the world, the highest numbers of Sudanese immigrants are distributed between America, Canada, and various countries in Europe.
Sudan's climate varies quite substantially, from the hot, arid deserts to the north to the savannas and plainlands in the central and southern regions. The extreme weather of the north impacts the ability to grow certain crops such as maize and millet, as well as the traditional vegetables that Sudanese people depend on so heavily. Due to an ongoing civil war spanning over 20 years, Sudan is now split into north and south. This severe instability within the region has caused extreme food shortages for people in both countries, and this resonates throughout the communities surrounding the conflict zones. This conflict, coupled with Sudan's mostly harsh climate, lack of adequate water sources and rainfall, is a recipe for disaster, seeing a substantial amount of the population suffering from poverty. Southern Sudan is influenced predominantly by tribal ties, with hundreds of different tribes and languages. Abundant rainfall of the southern regions helps the land to thrive, and this encourages the grazing of livestock and agriculture within the region. Northern Sudan has a strong Arabic influence, comprising 39% of Sudan's ethnic makeup. This influence lends its language, various Arabic traditions, and its dominant religion of Islam to the nation. Islamic food law is a major influence on the diet and food culture of Arabic Sudanese people and requires food to be certified as halal before being consumed. For meat to be certified as halal, it must be blessed before it is bled to death by the hand of a Muslim butcher. The holistic approach to health and well-being that Islam represents also states that consuming things that are harmful to one's body are forbidden. This is known as haram. Consumption of alcohol and intoxicants are two things among a wide array that are considered to be haram. Gender inequality is highly prevalent in Sudanese culture and is reflected in their eating habits. Families rarely share a meal together because men and children take precedence over women. They typically eat first, while the women of the household have their meals separately after them.
Following this, lunch is considered the main meal of the day and would generally consist of a stew incorporating meat, poultry or fish, vegetables like spinach, sweet potato or onions, vegetable oils and/or beans depending on family income. All these ingredients are readily available in Australian grocery stores and possibly even local markets and local corner stores, so are easily accessible. This meal is normally accompanied by kisra flatbread, and as previously discussed, may have to be substituted for other flatbread alternatives. In Sudan, breakfast is often skipped due to financial strain. If breakfast is consumed, it is most likely to consist of porridge made from maize or millet and would be consumed late in the morning. The trend of skipping breakfast doesn't tend to transfer to Australian culture and may incur implications. However, these aren't predicted to be large. For the ingredients of traditional porridge, by either actively searching for maize in specialty stores or substituting readily available oat porridge, Sudanese norms are not hugely impacted in Australia. Following this, lunch is considered the main meal of the day and would generally consist of a stew incorporating meat, poultry or fish, vegetables like spinach, sweet potato or onions, vegetable oils and/or beans depending on family income. All these ingredients are readily available in Australian grocery stores and possibly even local markets and local corner stores, so are easily accessible. This meal is normally accompanied by kisra flatbread, and as previously discussed, may have to be substituted for other flatbread alternatives. Dinner is the least eaten meal amongst Sudanese. However, when eaten, usually consists of either a single glass of cow's milk or leftover food from the day, like stew, porridge, meat or vegetables. In Australia, a prepared meal is usually eaten for dinner, and since socialising in a dinner scene is very common in Australia, this may impact Sudanese individuals from a social sense. Nevertheless, cow's milk is readily available in Australia, and so the availability of traditional ingredients is not likely to be impacted by acculturation. It is also important to consider that in Sudan, snacking is not a common practice, and neither is alcohol consumption, as Islamic laws forbid it. This is opposite to norms in Australia and may cause social repercussions, as social gatherings in Australia commonly circulate around snacks and alcoholic beverages. These typical eating habits differ from Australian norms. However, overall, post-migration Sudanese individuals are likely to be able to continue a traditional diet whilst adopting a few alternatives. Especially with the increase of specialty stores and e-commerce included, there are likely to be minimal implications of acculturation.
So what are the similarities and differences between Sudanese diet and the Australian recommended diet? The similarity is that both diets have carbohydrates, proteins, fats and fibers, whereas the differences are about the proportion as well as the food sources of each nutritional group. For instance, carbohydrates accounts for more than 50% of the Sudanese diet, whereas according to the Australian recommended diet, carbohydrates should only be consumed around 35%. Also, the carbohydrates consumed by Sudanese are mostly cereals and sweeteners, whereas in the Australian dietary guideline, whole grains and high fiber cereals are recommended. Besides, the fiber intake for Sudanese is insufficient. Fruits and vegetables only accounts for 4% of the diet, while the Australian dietary guideline recommended that a healthy diet should consist 35% of fruits and vegetables. Lastly, most protein sources consumed by Sudanese are milk and eggs. Seafood, like fisheries, are limited. Due to the nutritional imbalance obtained by Sudanese, there are a lot of health implications faced by them. One of them is vitamin A deficiency, which results from the lack of leafy greens vegetables consumption in their diet. Iodine deficiency is another health effect which results from lack of seafood and salt intake in their diet. Last but not least, most Sudanese suffer from malnutrition as their daily energy intake is only around 1,700 252 kilocalories per person, while the Dietitian Association of Australia recommended that the average daily energy requirement for a person is around 2080 kilocalories.
Thank you for watching our presentation. Salam alaikum.